more physical with the way the hardware operates. So overclocking. I bet most of you guys are doing overclocking this way or another. It's actually a very positive thing to do when you know how to do it and when you take the countermeasures of getting a proper cooling mechanism. But imagine overclocking somebody's computer without his knowing it, and imagine stress testing it. The result is not very in his favor. Increasing the working frequency of a component of an hardware basically means it will produce more heat. I'm going to ignore the fact that even doing so, you're wearing down the hardware design-wise, and you're most likely shortening the life of the appliance. Without the proper cooling, this device will produce more heat. And as the heat increases, there are more and more problems. One of them is electric migration, which is a physical phenomenon which happens when there is an increase in currency and increase of heat. Basically, the electrons and the atoms within the hardware start to fight with each other, and eventually it gets to the point where the socket pins become crooked or physically cut in within, and it's no longer operating. And it's strictly a result of putting something overclocked, running, stressing it without the proper cooling. A dear friend of overclocking is overvolting. I don't know how much people are aware, but it's became really easy to dynamically change the voltage of devices nowadays. Some of the companies are manufacturing technologies that allow these CPUs and other processors to scale their voltage, mainly to reduce it, to give an increased battery life to the appliance, or to try to extend the experience to a better one. But the whole thing can go on the other side. You can increase the voltage. Sometimes, if you can increase it a bit too much, you're going to sap it, and it's going to be burned at the same moment. But assuming that it won't happen because there is some valid checking function, still, increasing the voltage will increase the currency, and as a result, more heat. A lot of more heating. Now, there is also the unstable effect, which I'm not going to address right now, because putting a system to be unstable could be done in different methods. I'm trying to go to the point where it's not going to be only unstable, it's also not going to survive that long. So overvolting and overclocking, we will see an example of how an attacker could implement these attacks without ever touching the hardware. The third attack is overusing. As you're probably aware, the hardware has a limited number of uses. You cannot use it indefinitely. There are problems associated with this. Depends on how your hard drive works and what mechanical parts there are in it. You can sabotage it in a different ways. The most straightforward example will be a CD-ROM drive. Just imagine popping the tray back and forth, back and forth. There is a limited number to how many the mechanical part in the CD-ROM drive will be able to handle it. So it's a funny example, and it surely won't going to alarm anyone because it's a CD-ROM drive. But another interesting idea is the same concept also works on flash memory. And we're going to see later on that using the same type of thinking, you can break flash memory and flash-based devices. The last and the most very straightforward attack that you can think of is the power cycling. Simply switch on, switch off, switch on, switch off. And it works on a very basic physical principle of temperature flexion. Basically, every time the device is on, there is current working, there is electricity, the device warms up, you close it, it cools down. Doing this process repeatedly, you're destroying the actual physical layer of the hardware. Not to mention about spikes, which could be a nice addition to this attack, which can by itself cause damage to the electricity on the hardware. Up to this point, does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm from internet. Do you have actual practical examples? For example, you mentioned CPU or other?
Yeah, I do. This presentation won't include any real demo because I do like my MacBook. and I would like to go home with it, working, in a working state. But there is, again, the overvoltage attack works on Intel CPUs, and if you like to find for people testimony, where you can search overclocking forms on the internet, and you can see like, hi, I overclocked my CPU to this amount of voltage, and it doesn't work anymore. So the other guy says, yeah, it happens. It means you burned the CPU, thank you very much. So again, we're going to see that there is a way to automate the process. It doesn't have to be like somebody will have to choose to overvolt. You can do it simply by using software. Any more questions? Okay. So the first target will be a computer fan. The system working, the system produces heats. The computer fan is an active cooling approach. And it's not an optional thing, it's not a choice. You have to have a computer fan in order to get your computer working. Otherwise, you suffer some of the problems to the extent that you might burn your own computer. So although computer fans are not targets per se, nobody will go that far to close your CPU fan, but it can help produce the same heating and the same physical effects that I described earlier. Some computer fans can be disabled or slowed down using a simple software that you can download like from every major website to deal with hardware, and it takes really small, if at all, effort to port it into a malware that once deployed, we'll see whatever the fan control can be connected to and simply disabling it. Now, most people that are not fanatic about the computers and their performance and don't have like all these monitors and performance widgets, they won't even pay the notice to begin with. They will just say, okay, my computer is working hard today, I'm writing so much documents, yeah, maybe you should rest a little bit. But matter of fact is the computer is getting overheated, and it will keep getting overheated, and as this person will keep using his computer, not aware of the problem, it will actually contribute to a lengthy exposure to high temperatures, and due to the lack of cooling. That's all. The computer was okay, there is nothing wrong with it, it's simply not getting ventilated enough. So again, the situation can cause electric migration, as I explained, and from there to have the computer simply toast, it's a very small distance. Okay, so the guy from Intel, this is for you. So the CPU, okay, obviously if you get to the CPU, we win. So it's a very central position and it's something that most people would like to directly attack. So again, not all of these methods by themselves can cause the problem, but we remain or reserve the right to combine any of these together. So we're going to show, or you guys can imagine, how combining two of these methods together could help getting there, and providing another of these methods in the formula will get even better. So stressing the CPU, I'm going to show an example of it in the next slide. It's a really straightforward action. Overclocking the CPU and overvolting the CPU, most companies, most BIOS manufacturers does allow these options in the BIOS, and you can download or upgrade the BIOS to whichever version needed so you can overclock and overvolt it. Regarding the APM and ACPI, some computers support performance steps, the P steps. And for instance, the Intel Atom processor, which really would like to reduce its voltage and stay on a lower current as much as possible. So for instance, putting the Intel Atom CPU on a P0, which means the highest performance possible, is basically counterproductive to what Intel or other companies has designed as a cheap and a fast CPU for embedded devices. They expect it to be a change of power states, and keeping it on the highest power state and perhaps stressing it won't do good for the chip. And the last entry here is the bricking. Now, a funny story about it. I'm on the conference mailing list, and the challenge of the conference, some of the guys talked about how out-of-the-box ideas of how we can actually solve the crack me without actually doing the crack me. And I did suggest microcode flashing. For guys who do not know, microcode flashing is basically, I have a slide in it, so wait for it. I'm just going to say that it's a very interesting attack technique. It's not very easy to implement, but it's definitely something that can break the CPU, and we're going to see it next. Okay, so we're going to see it next. Okay, the infinite loop. We said we want to stress the CPU, right? We have to make the most straightforward action to stress the CPU. We don't want to have any page out, we don't have any memory leakage, no access. This very sweet two opcodes instruction basically keeps the CPU jumping to itself. It's very easy to implement. You guys can run it on your computer. It will get to 100% CPU usage in a few seconds, sorry. And if you will run it, for instance, with a temperature monitor on your computer, you will see there is an average of a few temperature increment while running it. Basically, this is a very cacheable instruction. The CPU does not have to fetch any external information, so the ability here to stress the CPU is really huge. Going back to the microcode flashing. So what is the difference between microcode and firmware? Well, you can think about it like this. A firmware is more an operation high-level update, which can include different binaries and different applications. A microcode, in that matter, is something more low-level. For instance, the meaning for a microcode for a CPU is to actually patch the opcodes implementation. You can defect how opcodes are working. Now, going back to the Crack Me challenge of the conference, I did suggest that the final test instruction to check whether the serial is correct or not will be tampered with, so it will always return a correct answer. This is sort of an hypervisor approach to the problem, shitload of work. But again, in the perspective of attack, this is a very good vector because most of the CPUs, AMD, Intel, and other companies support microcode updates. Linux has a microcode updates interface which allows you to access it. I did hear on the mailing list that some folks said that there is encryption around it. The microcode are somewhat encrypted or signed. It is not clear because neither Intel or AMD has described, or I see that Intel would like to describe that.
I can answer to that Intel both signs and encrypts the microprocessors.
Okay, so yeah.
It is not in the file.
Okay, Jonathan?
Itzik, repeat, please.
So,
Repeat what?
oh, yeah.
I said that Intel both encrypts and signs are microcode updates, and that I know that some older AMDs, I don't know at present, didn't do this, so maybe somebody wants to research.
Jonathan?
Yeah, so signing is actually pretty cool. What happens if I try to say version XYZ of a given CPU is supposed to be updated with a given microcode update? What happens if I take that given microcode update and try to flash another CPU? It's still
Like incompatible versions between different CPUs, it will be signed correctly by Intel, but and it will be like okay from all the checks, but it will be a different series or a different manufacturer.
Signed per CPU. So
There's integrity checks. Okay.